Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm doing a film review on the Phantom Menace with my dad, so I'm passing it over to my dad.
Our story begins 32 years before the original Star Wars film and follows Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi as they protect Queen Amidala in hopes of securing a peaceful end to an interplanetary trade dispute. Joined by Anakin Skywalker, a young slave with unusually strong natural powers of the Force, they simultaneously contend with the mysterious return of the Sith. God, that sounds exciting. And it does sound great, but unfortunately, the way it is handled in almost every respect makes it feel, well, dull. For me, when it was released in 1999, it was so far removed from what I expected, and I know there's expectations, etc. But really, I was just so gutted. It just feels so plodding, moving from one unexciting action scene to the next. And don't get me started on the opening crawl. What kid wants to read about trade federation disputes and goodness knows what? Anyway, it's not really something that, in my opinion, none of us wanted to open. The first movie in the Star Wars saga, and now the Skywalker saga, according to Disney, 16 years after Return of the Jedi. Such a disappointment, but we'll get into the review.
Okay, so in my opinion, as you can see, the Yoda on this trailer doesn't look that good. Jabba is in the film, the pod racing part, and I actually really enjoy that. So, yeah.
Now on to characters. Well, the only characters that are interesting in my mind are Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and also Darth Maul. The others, for example Anakin, are so, well, again, just dull. Darth Maul, a great looking character, was so underused, and I bet Lucas regretted killing him off. Hence, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen Clone Wars Rebels and Solo, his reappearance later on. Jar Jar is great for kids, I guess, which Lucas intended, but seeing him in 99 was just so bad.
So yeah, Jar Jar Binks, I'm talking about him. One of the worst and most annoying characters in the whole film. I think you can agree that he sounds a bit like C-3PO. And Jar Jar Binks, Gungan. I hate when the Gungans do like that and shake their heads. It's just so annoying. So passing on to my dad.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Boss Nass, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, boss now.
Okay, so on to special slash visual effects. The practical effects, I'll just say that, are really awesome. If you watch some of the behind the scenes documentaries, you can see it. This is probably the most practical effects and props and everything that they actually use for a Star Wars film, believe it or not. But because it was augmented, instead of being augmented with CGI, the CGI was just kind of all over the screen. And they just lost it, in my opinion. There's too much reliance on CGI and the green screen. The look of it has a cartoon quality, particularly the end Gungan battle, which you might as well be looking at a CGI cartoon. Basically, it is. It does not look good, in my opinion. The space battles look good. The lightsabers are amazing. They can have the first on-screen lightsaber kind of ignitions for years because they could do it, whereas before they had to kind of do it cleverly off screen and stuff like that. But so it just looks a bit too cartoon. I know it's pre 2000 CGI, so obviously for its time it was way ahead of its time, but it hasn't aged well in my opinion.
I agree with my dad. It hasn't aged that well. Not that good. Compared to the second one. Second one is actually way better because Count Dooku's in it, and also it half reveals Sidious. Now.
Okay, so now on to the pace of the film. The movie does keep moving well, and at times, well, it keeps moving anyway. But as soon as the story hits Coruscant, oh my god! And the opening bit the opening half hour is so slow. But anyway, after that, Tatooine it picks up again, and then as soon as it hits Coruscant, it does go to a snail's pace, and you know which bit I'm referring to, the large round room, which is the Senate. That's not to say a Star Wars movie has to be action, flashing lights in your face. But even the most of the action just seems, I hate to use a word again, dull. Even the lightsaber battles, which visually look amazing, they're just too overly choreographed. And I know this isn't really anything to do with pace, but it just doesn't. They just keep hitting each other, but rather than hitting each other, they just keep hitting each other's swords. Um, but yeah, the pace just is a bit slow for me in terms of the dialogue and the action as well. What do you think?
So yeah, I do agree with my dad as well. Paced, slow. Duel of the Fates gets like medium paced,
Yeah, that
and
could be a bit.
I like to say that the Gungan battle too slow makes like the when they're battling, Jar Jar surrenders, and then like he does these weird funky things and just starts destroying the battle.
Yeah. Which kind of leads us on to action, the action scenes, which I kind of covered a bit before, but they just don't seem that exciting. For example, the pod race, which is like the centerpiece of the film, the main standout action scene, is just so boring the way it's filmed. And I think that's the problem. If you had a lot of first person shots or, panning with the camera, which there are a few, rather than bank left to right, you watch it and he does the same thing with Attack of the Clones as well in the end battle, which we'll cover in another review. You watch the pod race with left to right, left to right, left to right, and after you see that for about 20 times, it is so boring. And as much as it's a great CGI, you know, visual spectacle, I suppose, if you had a big home cinema to show it off, but it's just so dull the way it's filmed, in my opinion. So at the end of the day, and also that sequence as well. At the end of the day, you probably could just had a great character piece with like a game of sabacc, similar to what they did with Solo. You could have achieved that in like 5 minutes instead of it going on for like 20 to 30 minutes. So anyway, that's my rant. Over to you. What do you think of the action?
Okay, so going back to pod racing, the only part I liked about pod racing is that they brought back Jabba and I think Bib Fortuna.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
Yeah.
Which was actually played
Sebulba.
by Matthew Wood, did you know? Who plays General Grievous. Sorry, carry on.
Um, on the pod racing, I think Sebulba, he's like not really as like menacing as we thought he was, and he's a bit too like Watto.
Yeah. What's,
Um, Also going to the Duel of Fates, probably way better than the pod racing. Uh, Darth Maul, one of the best characters in my opinion, because you hardly see him. Yeah, like I think Lucas, yeah, he definitely should have regretted it. And over
what,
to
killing him
you.
off?
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Okay, shall we move on to costumes? So costumes, is that right? Are
yep.
amazing, in my opinion. Really good for a film. To me, though, the visual aesthetic doesn't really fit with Star Wars. And I know some people would say it's 32 years prior to A New Hope, and obviously fashions change. If you compare like the 60s to the 90s, obviously the fashions are totally different. And obviously it rolls around again over time, kind of. But it's the visual aesthetic, and I know it's different planets. You've got the Nubians, obviously on Naboo, you've got Coruscant, different looks, but it just feels and looks so different and far removed from what the original Star Wars film was. That was dirty, lived in, kind of grimy world. And I know that was part of the Empire, and this was like Republic era, and that's cool to watch that. But it just seems, and even by the time you get to episode 3, the visual, although that's 19 years before episode 4, the visuals are so different. And I know Lucas tried to tie it in and stuff, but it just doesn't work that well, in my opinion. Anyway, well, I couldn't have done much better, but I would have made it look a bit more like Rogue One for what the prequels would have looked like. I think would have been better. There could have been slight changes, but Anyway, what do you think costume wise?
Uh, I think they focused way too much on Queen Amidala because in the second and the third and the Phantom Menace, she changes costumes like every scene.
Yeah, she
I
does.
think that's all I have to
Yeah,
say.
yeah,
But like the costumes amazing.
yeah. Right, I'll move on to music then. So music, well, what can I say? Amazing score. 16 years after the last film from John Williams. Duel of the Fates being a standout. That one. However, slight negative due to the film's pace, especially if you listen to the Ultimate Edition soundtrack. The structure of it is all over the place. It's so many different, so many little kind of tunes on this Ultimate Edition soundtrack. There's probably like 50 tracks because of the pace of the film. Going back to what I was saying earlier, it's just all over the place. Just little theme, little theme, little theme, little theme, and there's no real flow to the music like the other films. Again, just my opinion, but that's what I think.
Okay, so what I think about the music, Duel of the Fates, they nailed that. But the only problem with Duel of Fates, it kind of doesn't go well with the scene. Do you agree?
No, I think it goes well with that scene because it's a kind of, in my opinion anyway, it feels kind of old, which it's supposed to. Um, but and it, you know, and with the chorus and everything. But I know what you're saying to a point. But what else do you think of the other themes?
Like the pod racing
Do you like the Trade
music.
Federation thing? You know the.
No,
No, you don't like that.
no,
That
that
kind of
sounds like
sounds like the Resistance theme, doesn't it? In
yeah.
episode 9, that's
Do,
what it is.
do, do.
Anyway, yeah. Anyway, on to my favourite bit, the direction. Is that right? We'll move on.
Yep.
So, in my opinion, George Lucas is a great ideas man, and he is. Look, he invented Star Wars, Indiana Jones, which was originally Indiana Smith, um, and then Howard the Duck, which was an all-time classic in inverted commas. Not really. And you know, but anyway, even in his life, he invented Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Fantastic, but he is not a good scriptwriter, in my opinion, or director. Again, don't get me wrong, I couldn't do any better, but as previously mentioned, the movie just feels dull. And that leads mostly, that is due to the directing. Because if somebody else would have directed this movie, I think the shots would have looked better and he would have gotten better performances from the actors. Okay? So what do you think?
Uh, I do agree with that, but my only disagree is that George Lucas is a half good director. One, because scenes like the sky, the space, also looks amazing.
Yeah, it does look amazing. Yeah. Okay, the acting. So again, in my opinion, the the best acting it comes from Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor, who are Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Possibly Ian McDiarmid as well, who spoilers plays the Emperor, pre-Emperor. He plays Darth Sidious. They're the only ones who really come out of the movie unscathed, in my opinion. The line delivery, particular way they've kind of electronically changed Padme Amidala's voice, yeah, Nasty Portman, just comes off monotone and flat and nod. Oh, it's just so awful. It's delivered in such a boring way. It puts off any person starting their Star Wars viewing order chronologically. Because imagine if this was the first movie you watched. Oh, anyway, Lucas, as I mentioned before, cannot direct actors, and it has shown in the documentaries that I've seen, like the beginning. I think Benjamin's seen that. Um, he's really an editor at heart and like an ideas man. It shows that he kind of moves bits around the editing room, and that's what what he likes to do. Because at the heart, he is an editor, ideas man, and he's kind of a documentary filmmaker who kind of gathers footage and then sorts out later in the editor's room, and that's the part he enjoys. And this unfortunately shows in the performances as everything pretty much feels pasted together. What do you think, Benjamin, about the acting?
Acting, Liam is good.
Yeah.
So is Ewan. I don't know the actor who plays Darth Maul.
Well, it's Ray Park does the body and all the moves and
Yeah.
everything, and it's Peter Serafinowicz. I think that's his name, Peter Serafinowicz, who is quoted by saying that George Lucas, make him sound evil. Apparently, that's what George Lucas said to him. In usual faster, more intense type thing. Sorry, carry on, mate. What do you think?
Okay, so yeah, C3PO's voice bit too high. Like it sounds like a robot would sound, but I feel like they put too much stuff into C3PO. And they didn't really start his origin that good. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I think, excuse me, I think it's more, yeah, more to the character and story, but I think they should never have made him, spoilers, built by Anakin Skywalker, because that just ruins his whole story arc to me. I don't think, he didn't need a story arc. He should, if anything, he shouldn't have been in this film, or Episode 2, or Episode 3. R2D2, fair enough, kind of. But again, both of them really could have just shown up as the end of Episode 3. But that's the story. We'll leave that. We'll get to that in our Episode 3 review if people want to hear it. So, should we move on, mate, to our favourite character? And this is more of a personal thing, obviously. My favourite character? So, actually, say your favourite. What's your favourite character, Benjamin?
I actually have two.
Okay, fair enough. Favourite character or characters, then?
This might be a bit strange because he is really annoying, but I really like the way he looks and that he's kind of funny.
Not me, is it?
It's Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, right.
Definitely not C3PO. He's never funny to me,
No.
and just bad character. My second favorite character is Darth Maul. One reason is because he has a really cool double red lightsaber, and the second reason is because, spoilers, they bring him back in Rebels and in Clone Wars.
And Solo at the end.
Yeah, and so.
And some of the comments. Well, my favourite character is probably Darth Maul. And yeah, that's a bit of a cliche thing to say, but I think, he's my favourite because of the way he looks. He's so underused. But it's just the way he looks and the potential of what they could have done. They could have had him as the reoccurring character in episodes 2 and 3 instead of Dooku. They could have easily done that. In my opinion, it would have been better. And I think Lucas, if he wouldn't say it, but I think he regretted killing him off. Hence what Benjamin just said about him being brought back in the Clone Wars, Rebels and Solo. I like I mentioned earlier, the acting by Ewan and Liam, and I think Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan are the most interesting characters as well. Mace Windu is a terrible character. He's given nothing to do, which is due to...
Except sit in the council.
Yeah, except sit in the council, which, to be honest, it wasn't going to be Sam Jackson. It was just because he lobbied for the part on a chat show once. He said, I really want to be in Star Wars. Obviously, that paid off. But he's just boring. Sam Jackson could have been great. Imagine like the Lando out of Solo, or even Billy D. Williams. He could, what have we here? He could have been like, hey man, what are you doing? And stuff like that. He could have done that. However, if you compare, if you look at, like, for older listeners, like Pulp Fiction, imagine if Sam Jackson did that kind of character in a Star Wars film. That would have been awesome. Lucius, whatever his name is. So that's really the characters. So the ending. So the ending, in my opinion, sets up episode 2 nicely. But again, in my opinion, it's too little, too late. They could have put all the plot of this movie, pretty much, if you get the bones of the story. I'm not talking about the boring Trade Federation plot, etc., etc. I'm talking about the things we wanted to see, which is mostly condensed 60% of it or whatever in episode 3. So you could have had it, the crawl, like, it is a dark time for the Republic, the Sith have returned. This is only a summarising bit. Obi-Wan has found a young boy, Anakin Skywalker, on the planet Tatooine, who is strong with the Force, etc., etc. They could have done that. I think it's the overall, and this applies to all the prequels, it's the overall structure of these films that I think is the problem. And I know in some ways it kind of mirrors the original Star Wars trilogy structure, i.e. Phantom Menace has a plot kind of standalone kind of plot, and then it moves to a few years later, and you know, it has a big like a cliffhanger at the end, and then there's a kind of a rescue at the start of the third film, and then the plot begins and ends. So it's kind of the similar structure, but I think they could have done it a kind of different structure, or even have the similar structure, but just kind of, you know, they didn't need a whole 2 hour plus film with this content, in my opinion, and Attack of the Clones as well. I think Revenge of the Sith could have been even structured. You could have had episode 2 and episode 1, or episode 3 as an episode 1, and then had 2 further movies in that. But anyway, we'll get to that. So that's really, so I say, but the ending as it stands does kind of, tee up nicely to episode 2. But it could have been done better. What do you think of the ending, Benjamin?
Now I don't think it goes it kind of links because, well, yeah, Anakin's still there, and obviously he's still there. But my disagree is that years go by, we don't see them have any missions.
You mean between episode 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks a bit. But they can sell books and comic books.
Yeah, that's not like a movie.
No, I know. That's what I agree, and I think there's too much. They should have cast.
They skip.
They should have cast. You're right, Hayden Christensen or whoever in episode 1, and have him throughout, because that's the problem, and that's what we'll get to with episode 2. We'll get to that. There's no smooth transition, and I know obviously it's depicting him as a young boy going into being a young adult, say from years 9 to 19, but I just think they should have, for the viewer, it's like him in episode 2, you're starting again, and that's not a good thing to do in a trilogy, particularly when you've only got 3 films. If it was a big, long, 10-part series, then fair enough. If the first episode you've got a young boy, like this could be flashbacks, or interesting, they could, because they put flashbacks in the new trilogy, they could have had Anakin, the young boy, told in flashbacks, but maybe that was too radical for what it was 21 years ago. But but as I say, they did that in Last Jedi a bit, and even Rise of Skywalker. So anyway, so that's the ending. Anyway, is that okay? You doing the ending? Okay, so the overall thoughts in grade. Shall I go first?
Yep, you go first.
Okay, so in my opinion, it is easily the worst Star Wars movie ever made. And despite its good bits, like Darth Maul, Ewan, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Liam Neeson, playing Qui-Gon Jinn, Ian McDiarmid up to a point, some of the look of it, some of the practical effects, great lightsaber battle despite only hitting swords, and being a bit too quick. I just think it is even worse than a Star Wars movie, which I just do not like what they did with Luke Skywalker, but again we'll get to that, The Last Jedi. I think it's even worse than that. It is, in my opinion, the worst Star Wars movie, and that's pretty much due to what I've said, and due to the script, the acting, the direction, and there's too much, and people always bang this drum, but there's too much CGI and green screen, because you just don't feel like you're there on some scenes. And like I say, all the practical effects, the models and stuff, they're just so not being augmented with CGI, something like Prometheus for older listeners, and anything else. It's too dull as well. So for me, it's a 5 out of 10. What do you think, Benjamin?
I think it's better than The Last Jedi, and it's got a few good scenes like the Duel of Fates.
Yeah.
Not really pod racing, because, like he said, it goes left to right, right.
It's just dull.
Just too, quick, makes you dizzy.
You have your opinion, though. You say what you think.
I'd say I'd give it 6 out of 10.
Good mark, yeah. So I'll give it 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10. So overall, we shall have our overall mark as 5.5 out of 10. Should we say that?
Huh?
'Cause
Wait, no, 11 out of 20. Yeah, that
Okay,
makes a
let's
lot more
do that. I
sense.
was just going to
Okay,
ask
so
it, but
11
yeah,
out of
okay. We'll
20.
do 11 out of 20. Okay, so it's not a great mark for the Phantom Menace, is it?
No.
Not a great start to the Star Wars saga. If you were looking at it, in chronological order, out of the 9, I call it, out of the 11 movies. Okay, I'll let my boy sign off then.
Hope you did enjoy this review of me and my dad doing Phantom Menace, the first movie. See you guys in the next review, wherever. Goodbye.